He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got a Gorka show today. I reached out to Dr. G because it just seemed like everything I wanted to talk about was national security related, and I had not caught up with him since the shakeup at the National Security Council, so we're going to touch on all that. And he liked hanging with me, I think, because he gave me a ton of time, and so that's going to be the show. There's a lot of news out there. I will do a newsier show tomorrow, and hopefully, almost assuredly, we'll also have Senator Hawley, so a busy week here on the Marlow Show. I gave a speech last night on the state of the media, which I thought was compelling. I'll try to make that available for all of you as well, maybe on Friday. One thing that came across the transom with that I did not get to touch on with Dr. G is apparently a very dramatic, executed, brave operation to liberate Venezuelan dissidents trapped in the Argentine embassy in Caracas by the United States, by the Trump administration. This is a big signal to Hispanic voters that Trump cares about them, and he cares about Latin America, and he cares about their issues, which I think is very cool. We've been hearing for years that the Hispanics, Latinos, natural conservatives, Trump's really going to try to lock down those voters by actually listening to them, and not to mention taking a lot of illegal alien thugs out of their neighborhoods. Seems like a great idea as well. So I don't know how anyone in the John Bolton or the Joe Biden realm argues against this. The only argument I could see why this might not be a bad thing is because it's not entirely pacifist. But it seems like a really precision mission that was executed by the Americans to rescue people who did not need to be incarcerated the way they were. So just political dissidents, and we freed them. Pretty cool. I did not get to that with Dr. G, so I mentioned that now. The world right now focused on the Pope. The Pope is I will know we do know by the end of the day there's not going to be any Pope today. Conclave is out there. And it is so the black smoke. I do black smoke, white smoke talk. White smoke, you get a Pope. Black smoke, no Pope. You can do that over and over again all week long. That's the point. So the conclave begins. And a lot of the candidates who are potential popes are more conservative than Pope Francis. Others are more in Pope Francis's image. I will try to bring some of the details tomorrow to you. I've got a lot of notes on it, but I'm not going to have time to get into all of them today. But there's a lot of hope that we're going to move in the correct direction with the new Pope. But then again, Pope Francis, we had high hopes for him too momentarily, and then he became very obsessed with open borders and illegal immigration and the like. The Fed met today, and Jay Powell spoke. I don't have all the details in front of me, but the anticipation was nothing was going to change. It's a matter of reading tea leaves for when the next cuts are going to happen, seeing how the markets react. Markets are pretty flat after the speech, but the rates were held steady, and because there is a rise in uncertainty, but remember, inflation went down. So I'm awaiting a truth bomb from President Trump, perhaps, to suggest that we should have lowered rates already. No one really thought rates were going to get lowered this time, but we'll see if Trump continues to put pressure on Powell. Trump wants those rates down. He thinks it'll help the economy. I think even our own John Carney, who has liked the rates high for us, a frequent guest in the show, our finance editor at Breitbart, he is now open-minded to maybe lowering them a little bit, but we'll probably have to see one more solid month of little or no inflation for that to be a real possibility coming up. That's the essential stuff right now, other than what I get to with Dr. G, but there's, of course, more for you at Breitbart News. But India versus Pakistan, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into what's going on in Israel. More to come as well. So this is great. We talked about the National Security Council. We talked to him about his hopes for the new Pope. All that stuff comes up with Dr. G, one of the best in the business. Let's get into it. Oh, and thanks to producer Misty for putting together the show.
You know as well as I do that the legacy media is broken. For decades, big cable filtered information to hide the truth from Americans. It's no small reason why trust in mass media has hit historic lows. But thanks to outlets like Breitbart, the truth can break through, providing facts and voices legacy outlets block from the airwaves. But big cable still has the ability to control access to information you want. They do it by limiting access to something called spectrum, the invisible airwaves that power affordable wireless internet, and by forcing you into their bundles, keeping independent media out of reach. Leaders in Congress like Ted Cruz are working with President Trump to expand spectrum access for more Americans. Our president offered additional access in his first term, and he can raise $100 billion now by doing it again. And conservatives like Stephen Moore argue it's a perfect fit for the current economic plans. Call your legislator now and tell them to expand spectrum access today if you dig what these guys are saying, so more Americans can read the news in independent outlets like this one. You could also learn more at endthecableopoly.org. That's endthecableopoly.org.
All right, we're here with my friend Dr. Sebastian Gorka, who is the Senior Director of Counterterrorism and a Deputy Assistant to the President of the United States from the National Security Council. Dr. G, you guys have been busy. There's a lot going on, and I think the peace through strength approach is really what's coming through. It feels like we're just threading that perfect needle of not getting entangled in foreign wars that will last a decade and a half, but we're still putting all the bad guys on notice. I guess we'll start. I'm curious because everyone is discussing today what's going on between India and Pakistan. And one thing that's noteworthy here is that they're nuclear power. So this is something that we do need to spend a lot of time paying attention to this. But from your vantage point, what is happening? They're exchanging fire. We got dozens of people killed. This is, an escalation among nuclear power. So what is the perspective of the National Security Council right now on this?
Well, first, before I get to that, I want to say thank you to you, specifically in the Breitbart team, for the 100 days you published my piece, 100 Days of Killing Jihadis. And I don't think ever since I moved to America, I never had an article garner 4,000 comments in 24 hours, not likes, but comments. So, and somebody pulled one sentence out of it, somebody I didn't know, and posted it on Twitter, which is the essence of No More Stupid Wars. And God bless that lady, but we can talk about that later. It was another average day in the White House. I was with the president in the East Wing ballroom with the president of FIFA and a few hundred other guests as the president launched the FIFA task force for the World Cup. An amazing, amazing day. And I'm sitting on my phone. Chief of Staff Susie Wiles is behind me, and my phone starts vibrating, and I get a call from the White House Situation Room. They want you here right now, Dr. G. So that's when I first heard. I walked into the Situation Room under the West Wing with Marco Rubio, the acting National Security Advisor was there, the Deputy National Security Advisor, elements of the NSC team, and we were tracking what was happening with regards to the Indian response to the militant terrorist attack almost 2 weeks ago. I'll say this from the unclassified side of affairs. The question of Kashmir, Jammu has been a neuralgic point between these two nuclear nations. I was there when Secretary Rubio, the acting National Security Advisor, engaged with his counterpart in Pakistan. He'd already called the Indian government, and as is his very, very capable ability to do so, he prevailed on both sides to let cooler heads dominate the reaction. And I think what we're looking at right now is a de-escalation of the tensions between the two capitals. And right now, you know what it's like. You're in the media business. You're a maven at this. I have a phrase in national security: all initial reports from the battlefield are wrong. So what we're doing right now is we are collecting the intelligence from the most powerful intelligence enterprise in the world, and we will have our own response in terms of analysis to casualties and so forth in the days to come. But look, let's be very clear. India was attacked, and India responded as is permissible in international law when it comes to a terrorist threat and a training camp. Right now, we're very glad that things have quietened down a little bit.
So what I'm reading and just trying to sort through international press, which none of it is free or trustworthy, but Pakistan's claiming that India has surrendered, and obviously I don't believe that to be true, and that they shot down entire fleets of Indian fighter jets. I haven't actually seen any evidence of that, just what they're saying. And India is trying to give the press looks into places that they bombed, and they claimed all of them were terrorist hideouts, even though we'll see if any civilians were killed. But it seemed like India responded with a lot of force. But what I'm most interested, I think, in, Dr. G, is where this could go, because from my concept of the Pakistani government, even though they are a nuclear power, they seem to be much more focused on enriching themselves personally than on trying to fight wars. And so that does make me concerned here that they're precipitating some sort of violence. Well, what's the essence of the tension for the audience, and were you guys surprised at the NSC when this took place?
Sadly, as somebody who watches the region and has done for decades, I was not surprised. That region, the line of control, is an area that has seen violence for decades, clashes back and forth between the Indian authorities and the Pakistani authorities. So it's saddening, but I'm not surprised. With regards to the broader picture and how it affects U.S. national interest, look, I'll be very blunt.
Right.
The vice president had an incredible trip to India. And as the world's largest functioning democracy, there is a lot, especially in the tariff reset, there are a lot of exciting things happening, especially with regards to India. From my portfolio, I will add to that whatever heightened, increased, improved relationships we may have with India. I just want to take everybody back to day 41 of the Trump administration, where I was at Dulles on the tarmac at 3 a.m. with Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, John Radcliffe, Pam Bondi, and Jafar, the real architect of the Abbey Gate massacre in Kabul that left 13 of our servicemen and women dead. He was brought to justice. He landed on a DOJ jet that had come from where? From Islamabad. So I want to recognize, despite what has happened in the last 24 hours, not only the improved relations and the perspective for incredible collaboration with India, the fact that Pakistan, after 4 years of the disastrous Biden administration, has worked with us, especially in counterterrorism, to bring one of the most heinous terrorists to justice on U.S. soil. So I don't want to lose picture of all the good things, despite what happened regionally in the last 24 hours.
Right. So one thing that I was thinking about, which is always the prospect of nuclear war, is one of the scariest things ever. And we spend a lot of time thinking about Russia deploying nukes, perhaps on Ukraine, but all of that strikes me as very irrational. And I think that Putin's often not given enough credit for being rational. Everyone acts like he's crazy. I don't like Putin. I know you don't either, Dr. G. When you were national security editor at Breitbart, we wrote constant content about Putin that was not positive. There wasn't a positive piece run. So just so people in the audience who might be new, just so they're familiar with where we're coming from here. But this to me strikes me as a more this is actually slightly scarier to me in that regard, Pakistan versus India, if that continues to escalate. Are you optimistic that this will de-escalate? What's the U.S. doing? And give me your take on nuclear war in general.
Well, let's start with that, because we could talk about hours and hours with regards to that. I actually, at Harvard, I studied under Graham Allison, the doyen of decision-making theory. He wrote the book, The Essence of Decision, on the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I was in his class when we reviewed and he renewed that seminal work. And there is a little bit of irony when it comes, the scariest weapon in human history, there is a little bit of a paradox. It's also the most useless in terms of when you can use it, because it is, it's the ultimate weapon as such. And there are legions, there's libraries of books. Walt Rostow and everybody else have written about the paradoxical non-utility of nuclear weapons, because their main utility is what? As a deterrence, as a thing you don't use, and as a shield. And you mentioned Ukraine. Let's talk about Ukraine for a second. Sadly, it was the Clinton administration, it was the then British government, it was the then French administration, and the then Russian Federation that said to Kiev in 1994 in the Budapest Memorandum, you've got nuclear weapons. You've got the third biggest stockpile of nuclear weapons after America and the newly created Russian Federation post-1991. You don't need those nuclear weapons. Why don't you give those to Moscow, and we will guarantee your safety? Sadly, Kiev believed that promise from Bill Clinton et al. And if they had maintained that nuclear arsenal, they wouldn't have had to use it, but it probably would have prevented the invasion of both Crimea under Obama and the rest of the occupied territory during the Biden administration. So that's the kind of the ironic utility of nuclear weapons, not pressing the button, but telling guys, hey, I do have a button. You remember the infamous tweet from President Trump with regards to Kim in North Korea? I've got a button. My one's bigger, but mine works as well. So, that's the utility of nuclear weapons. And I think right now I was in the Situation Room, sitting right next to Secretary Rubio, the acting national security advisor, and with him in the hot seat, things will be calm, things will be managed, because, this is a very different administration. This isn't Obama, this isn't Biden, this isn't Clinton. This is a president and a cabinet not to be trifled with. And as you said, it's about peace through strength.
Okay, let me change the focus to I want to speak about Israel and what's going on with the Houthis there. It feels like this is another one where it feels like things are going in a direction that I like personally as someone who likes a peace through strength approach, not an entirely isolationist approach. It feels as though Netanyahu is taking just the baton from Trump, and it feels like Trump softened the belly a little bit, and then Netanyahu's coming in to sort of extend the pressure put on some of the worst groups of people in the world. And this is being done in a way that is, not compromising American troops, not putting us at risk, which seems to be pretty excellent. But if you go back to Trump attacking the Houthis in an overwhelming way, it's kind of causing Iran to pull back. Where I want to go with this is where this positions us for a potential Iran deal, which I feel like Trump wants. But give me some of the blow by blow about what you think is going on there now.
Well, look, this is very clear. This is the most intense campaign. We were very clear. Look, when you go to war or when you have limited operations, when you apply force in any campaign, the most important thing of all is having a definition of victory. Just applying force without a sense of when you stop or what you're trying to achieve has gotten America into lots of trouble under neocons and under Democrats for the last, 20, 30 years. So here, as is his wont, the president was very clear. The definition of victory is freedom of maritime traffic through the straits. Yeah. Why? Because it's not just important for America and our national economy, it's important for world trade. The fact that instead of going through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, commercial shipping would have to go all the way south to the Horn of Africa to avoid being fired at by the Houthis is sheer insanity. And when the president was briefed on the fact that 147 times in recent months, U.S. ships had been fired upon, that an American-flagged vessel couldn't travel through the Bam Strait without being hit or fired upon for the last 18 months. He said, well, that ends and that ends now. And in the last few weeks, we've deployed more than 1,100 strikes. We've crushed key communication command and control sites of the Houthis. We've taken out key members who are missileers, who are UAV experts for the Houthis. And at the end of it all, we know why they're capable of doing what they're doing. It's because Iran has been providing them with the technology and with the training and with the funding. But yesterday's news is just incredible. It's one more instance of the art of the deal, from the tariffs to the border to the Houthis. Can you believe it, Alex? We're 110 days in? It's incredible.
So the combined attack, basically with the U.S. attack and then Israel following up on it, of the airports, it's cutting rebel supply lines from Iran. And so this basically means that they can fire missiles, but they're going to run out. And that I think puts them very vulnerable because Iran can't get to them. Then if Iran does, that's really poking the bear with the United States as well as Israel. So it feels like this is positioning for a potential deal. I don't think Trump wants a war with Iran. I don't. I would love your take, being on the inside on that. I don't think he does, but I don't know what a new Iran deal looks like. And I'm sure you can't, because the deal stuff, I'm sure you can't give me all the details, but what could something look like?
Well, it's very simple. In the president's letter, parts of which have been, declassified or at least revealed from the NSC and by, Mike Waltz, the former national security advisor. It's not waffle. It's not diplomatic boilerplate. It's very clear. You will dismantle your nuclear weapons program, number one. And number two, you will cease supporting the numerous proxies in the region that are part of both the Shia and the Sunni global jihad network. From the Houthis to Al-Shabaab to Hamas to Hezbollah. Look, as I go around the government, getting briefed, laying down the new policy prescriptions for the president, every significant threat I look at from the counterterrorism perspective, you scratch the surface, and underneath the thin veneer of what purports to be a non-state jihadi threat group is Iran. Sooner or later, you find the tentacles of Iran. So that's why the president is, and you're a media guy. I tell people, just watch the press briefings and the just impromptu press sprays, whether he's walking to Marine. Look, I was there in the Oval when my friend Alina Habba was sworn in as the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey. And this is a swearing in for a U.S. Attorney. Very magnanimously, the president allowed the lunatic media, the mainstream media, into the Oval to ask questions. And of course, he took the opportunity to do what? To address Iran at the swearing-in ceremony of a U.S. Judicial individual. He said, Iran must give up its nukes, and if they don't, there will be hell to pay. So this is, and as you said, let's be crystal clear. The 77 million Americans, the popular vote the president garnered, is a vote for what? No more forever wars. As the president said, no more stupid wars.
Yeah.
But he's not an isolationist. And whether it's the first administration with the 51 cruise missiles against the Syrian base where the chemical weapons were being deployed, whether it's killing more than 300 Russian special forces in the Middle East who are working for Putin to destabilize the region. What the president does is measured, intense, and short-term application of decisive force. Remember, under Obama, they kept talking about red lines, and all they did is they talked about it, and then again and again and again, the aggressors, whether it was Putin, whether it was Iran, whether it was North Korea, crossed those red lines, and there were no repercussions. The president doesn't jaw. He just says, okay, you're doing something bad. Okay, well, this is my response. It's not massive boots on the ground. It's not regime change. It's decisive, intense use of force, and that's exactly what we just saw with the Houthis, which means international freedom of shipping will be a reality again through the Red Sea and the Bab Strait.
It's so simple. International freedom of shipping, no nukes for bad guys.
Right.
Seems obvious.
Let's talk about it. It's stunning how people either willfully don't see it, don't want to see it, or misrepresent it. Let's talk about Ukraine for a second, and the infamous, Oval meeting with Zelensky. And I've done a lot of media, as you can imagine, especially with European outlets, and they always say, oh my gosh, he's capitulating to Moscow, and why won't he sign a piece of paper with NATO membership or what have you? And the idea that I have to explain this kind of high school level reality, any piece of paper that says we will protect Ukraine is irrelevant as long as it's a piece of paper. But if you sign, as we just did, a rare earth minerals strategic deal between Kiev and Washington, and you go, oh, that's interesting. We are now going to economically and industrially bind these two nations. You will have hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans on the soil of Ukraine working for those companies. That's when you stabilize a country. That's when bad people think twice about invading it. It's not very complicated, but Alex, I don't think people want to see it, or they don't want to admit the truth about it.
Well stated. Since we're on Ukraine for a minute here, Dr. G, it just feels like, I know this is all are the deal stuff and no one should be taken literally right now, But Zelensky is taking such a hard line in negotiations and trying to reclaim territory from Russia that Russia took before Trump's first term. It just seems wildly unrealistic, and it makes me concerned the war is just going to go on infinitely, and that Zelensky doesn't really want to bring it home. I'm sure the president would tell you otherwise. I'm sure he would say that he really is serious about winding things down. But where do we stand here? And you guys are observing this rhetoric. It just seems very intense from him.
It does, but I will say the positive reality of the last 3 weeks is that the president has very clearly, with candor, demonstrated his open frustration with both Kiev and Moscow, and I think that's why we're inching ever more closely to some kind of ceasefire and some kind of a resolution so the quote-unquote meat grinder stops. At the end of the day, look, you can't be at war forever. And the issue will be when the Ukrainian people say, okay, enough is enough. Crimea is a question, but we want the young men of Ukraine and the young men of Russia to stop, killing each other by the bushel every single week. So I think that level of very clear frustration from the Oval Office has got us to the positive place where we are today.
All right, so Dr. G, let's go to your article, which is at 4,500 comments about 100 days of killing jihadis. I was trying to figure out how many have you guys killed? Do you even know exactly?
Yes.
And how many continents is this on? And has there been any pushback? It just seems like one of those sleeper amazing things that's happening. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, I can give you the full unclassified list, but I'll just give you the wave tops. So we have tier 1, band 1 threat groups, and within them, that's the primary focus, like ISIS-K, like Al-Shabaab, like legacy Al-Qaeda. From those tier 1 groups in multiple theaters, in the first 100 days, we have killed 74 high-value targets. Wow. That is excluding the Houthis, right? So that's people we know are key leaders, like the number 2 of ISIS in Iraq, the number 3 in ISIS in Iraq, the key financier and recruiter in Somalia. We've been tracking these people, and under Biden, they were watching, refusing to do anything. When the president heard that, he said, kill them. He unleashed the hounds of hell, and day 100, we were at 74 high-value targets. Amazing. And we're just letting the best of the best, our tier 1 assets, the intelligence community, the DOD, do the job they swore to do. And I can tell you something, it's not just about Pete Hegseth's recruiting numbers. It's also about, the tip of the spear getting to do what they were designed to do.
All right, tell me about this photo with Jafar, the Abbey Gate plotter, where he's getting fingerprinted. This is an unbelievable photo. Oh, who's on this plane with you? What kind of a plane? It looks like a commercial plane. Like, well, what is this plane? This is in the article. People are going to have to look it up.
Yeah, so that's day 41 of the Trump administration. It's the night when the president gave his address to the joint session of Congress. I couldn't be there because I was told that, the DOJ, that is a DOJ plane, was on its way from Pakistan. We about 2 weeks prior to day 41, on the express direction of the president, John Ratcliffe, Tulsi Gabbard, we provided some very exquisite intelligence to the counterterrorism counterparts in Pakistan, with which they were able to locate and apprehend Jafar, who was responsible, he's admitted this under interviews with the FBI, for more than 30 jihadi attacks in multiple countries, not just against U.S. servicemen and women, but also Russia, Iran, and elsewhere. And this is a person we were looking for more than 3 years. Biden wasn't interested, and we got him. And it was one of the greatest moments of my professional career to be standing on the tarmac with about 100 federal agents, with the directors of the FBI, the CIA, the Attorney General, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. And the story, if I may, the story was just so So I stood there, freezing. It was like 3 a.m. And I let the principals go up. They, verified the fact that the mastermind, the killer, is there. He was being fingerprinted by Customs and Border Protection, surrounded by the fly team, the FBI's special agents that travel to do these kinds of missions and bring these evildoers to justice. And then the principals came off. I said, okay, I'm going up. So I walked up onto the deck. I stared into the face of this piece of human filth right in the eyes. And then I came back down the stairs, and I realized that standing behind me were a dozen faces I'd seen before in my offices in the White House. And I realized these weren't tier one operators. This wasn't JSOC or Delta Force or the FBI, but these were the incredible analysts from the intelligence community who didn't expect to see Jafar, knew he was coming to Dulles, and they just rolled up to be there to kind of close a chapter in their lives because they dedicated 12 hours a day, in a basement and an intelligence facility, watching through our exquisite platforms, trying to find in many cases, it was personal. There was an individual there, I can't give details, but he's from that region. He was a linguist. His family were trapped in Afghanistan when Biden surrendered. And he ended up working for the intelligence community, and he was on this manhunt for 3 years. And I stood there, and, there are these moments, Alex, when, you don't decide, it's the big man upstairs. And I said, you know what? You need to see this guy. So I broke them down into groups of 3, and I just walked them up the jet bridge onto the deck of the DOJ plane. And I let each one of these analysts look at this person. And afterwards, their boss gave me a big hug and said, you have no idea what it means for us to actually be here and get some closure. That's the kind of thing you don't get to put in your LinkedIn, Alex, but that is what makes it all worthwhile.
Totally. And I like this just in our very digital age, that just being able to have something tactical, tangible. I was just complimenting yesterday on the show how I like the way Trump deals with these foreign leaders, even ones who he's going to have a tough conversation, but he brings them to the White House. He treats them nice. He's friendly with them. And then they go and they get down to negotiating, global trade and stuff. But I still like that. And I like that he seems to really be enjoying it. And
let me just give you a little bit of inside baseball. I could not do what he does. Yeah. He is one of the most, despite everything the mainstream legacy lying media will tell you, he is perhaps one of the most magnanimous, gracious people I've ever met. Because if you cross, you know me, right? If you cross Dr. G, you are dead to me, right? Many people on Capitol Hill and elsewhere have made the mistake, and you are deleted from my memory banks. Sure. President Trump, you can be lambasting him, lying about him in the mainstream media to your local press back home, whichever country you're a leader of. He doesn't shut you down. He doesn't close you off. Why? Because he realizes in the interests of the American people, maybe we need a trade deal with Canada. Maybe we need to, take down the cartels in Mexico. So I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to invite you to the Oval Office. And it's quite stunning what this man will do, including taking a bullet for us, at Butler. He will do that for all the American people. So he's got something I couldn't do, but God bless him.
Yeah, and I think that this is the other thing is when you're thinking big picture, and I don't need to opine on this, but maybe you will. I think a lot of what he's doing is really just reading between the lines, and I don't want to get you in any trouble here, Dr. G, but a lot of it is about China. It feels like everything is about China. Yes. He won't say it. And so for example, for me, I want to reshore as much as we can. I want as much American manufacturing as we can, but I love that he's cutting deals with India because realistically, we're not going to reshore everything. And just being let's be pragmatic here. We got to govern. We can't just complain on the Everything app now. We got to just pick some stuff. And if we're doing some manufacturing overseas, way better India than China. And Trump is doing stuff like that. And it just feels I don't know. It just feels like he gets it. Feels like he gets it. Of course, he's the leader of the free world, but it's just heartening to see some of these moves.
Yeah, I won't get in front of my colleagues, the likes of Peter Navarro and my friend Scott Bessent and others. But as an American taxpayer and as an American, it's not a difficult choice. We want the best jobs for Americans. Mm-hmm. We want jobs about real things like shipbuilding. The president is so committed to shipbuilding industry in America being revivified. We want, pharmaceuticals. We don't want 90% of our antibiotics being made in a communist country. So all of that is absolutely correct. But do we need all of the jobs to be in America? And is it a difficult choice to choose between a nation like China with gulags being the place where, we buy some things, or the biggest democracy in the world that actually has voter ID in it, which is called India? I don't think that's a difficult choice. And you saw that in the speeches from the vice president, from JD, right? I mean, it's not a complicated, we should not be outsourcing our jobs to a country that has said by 2048 we will be a satrapy tributary nation to China. That doesn't make sense in anybody's world.
Yeah, well said. Okay, so the big shakeups at the National Security Council, and I know you liked working for Mike Waltz, and it just seemed like there was he had a big target on his back from day one. He's moving on to the UN. I think it's a good fit over there, so that makes sense to me. Marco, whose star is rising very quickly, is now the National Security Advisor. This has been done in the past. This is not a new thing, so maybe he'll stay. Do you think that it's a long-term thing? And just give me a flavor of what's changed in the last few weeks.
Yeah, so I liked being here under Mike Waltz. He was my immediate boss as a senior director for the National Security Council, because I've spent a lot of time with Green Berets in the last 18 years, and of course he's the first ever Green Beret to be in that slot. But as JD has said, it's actually a promotion. The National Security Advisor is not Senate confirmed. The ambassador to the United Nations is, and people forget, it's the only ambassador that is a cabinet member. The United Nations ambassador is actually a cabinet rank in the U.S. system. So, congratulations to Mike, and he'll do just fine there. I don't expect it. I'm not going to reveal, things that have been told to me by Secretary Rubio or anybody else. But I think he loves being the Secretary of State. I think he's really enjoying this new world. He walked in and held his first meeting with us senior directors on Monday. But it is a joy. I mean, I watched him in the cabinet meetings before this change of role, or this dual hatting for the secretary. It's a joy to behold him, because he devours information, just like Mike did. And he's clear in his analysis, and he is decisive. It's very Trumpian the way Secretary Rubio acts, and I think he's you know better than me the constellation that is the MAGA world, but I think he has pleasantly surprised lots of Trump voters, don't you?
Beyond that, I mean, just the handicapping 2028. I mean, he's got to be right there at the very top. And I know that you should absolutely. I'm not even inviting you to opine on this, Dr. G, because he would get lots of trouble.
I'm not going to.
but he is. I mean, it's just everything he's doing. He just sees the board so clearly right now, and it's just unbelievable to think that he was a villain on the pages of Breitbart for the Gang of Eight amnesty, and now he's like one of my favorite guys. Period. And
on China, oh my gosh, couldn't be better.
Well, that's why. I mean, that's where he started to earn our respect back, because he was the original, other than Trump himself, Republican to point the finger and say, that's the problem right there. Right. The big red giant in the Far East. That's it. So anyway, I don't hate this. It just seems like a lot of work, because the State Department's a massive bureaucracy, and the NSC has there have been some problems there. Trump has managed to navigate them, but it just feels like there's, you get the John Boltons in there. It just feels like there's been some bad national security advisors in the past.
It's really important to understand not just Secretary Rubio, the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, or anybody else. You got to stand back and look at the bigger picture, and just look at the roster. Look at cabinet members and directors of agencies. And look, I was in the first Trump administration, and I had to leave because of people inside at the highest level who were literal saboteurs, like John Kelly, like lower-level individuals like Vindman, a serving colonel who committed felonies by leaking classified presidential communications to the mainstream media before he was anointed a hero of the resistance. Compare 8 years ago or 7 years ago to today. And it's not just that these are friends of mine, but the fact that literally this morning I was with the director of the CIA, the director of the Secret Service, with Sean Curran. Kash Patel's there, Tulsi's there, Pam Bondi's there, John Radcliffe. These are people who know each other, who trust each other. And more important than that, they're trusted by the president to execute on the mandate of America First as provided by 77 million Americans. There are no Rex Tillersons floating around the cabinet right now. I mean, I look at Scott Bessent was a friend of mine before he became the secretary, and what he is achieving, just at Treasury is stunning. Just the success, and you bring in. I saw Jay Bhattacharya in the Oval day before yesterday. I bumped into Bobby Kennedy. Think about just who we have in these strategic positions. There's going to have to be success, right?
Yeah. We were playing the Bhattacharya clips of him talking about freeing the Beagles, which is, remember, Dr. G, we were told it was a hoax that we were doing the Beagle experiments. Like, we were told, we were policed at Breitbart that Fauci's Beagle experiments weren't real, we were told. And so Bhattacharya said, I came in and stopped the Beagle experiments. It's like, wait a minute, I was told those were fake. How could you stop them if they weren't real? So we just got so many lies. But the whole point is that there's so much to unwind that we can't import new problems by people who are trying to undermine Trump, which is what happened. There's a lot of people who came into the administration the first time who felt like that they could subvert him. And it feels like you're doing a better job there. And so we're encouraged, but any chance you're in the running for the full-time job there at NSC?
We know the economy right now is absolutely chaotic. We don't know if it's doing great or if it's doing bad, but I'll tell you one thing that is the biggest no-brainer going on right now. It's gold and precious metals. Gold is up 25% year to date, over $3,300 an ounce. Goldman Sachs thinks it could go to $3,700 an ounce this year, and I would not be surprised if it does. It is just a remarkable rise in gold. If you look at it year over year, it was about $2,400 at this time last year. If you look at a 5-year margin, it's almost doubled. If you bought gold years ago, you would have made a fortune. And I've got great partners in the gold industry, Priority Gold. You go to prioritygold.com/freedom, or you text SNC as in Salem News Channel, SNC, and you connect with them and they will get you the number is 24999. Text SNC to 24999, or you go to prioritygold.com/freedom. They got a free wealth preservation guide. They got a free gold and silver guide. They'll get in touch with you, answer your questions, and get you into the gold game. And it's the place to be. It is the safest bet. It's the hedge against everything. And with Trump's policies, you might also see silver rising. So there's other precious metals, IRAs, 401ks. You can get involved tax and penalty free. Great way to protect your wealth. And at this rate, you're probably going to grow it quite a bit as well. So again, SNC to 24999, or go to prioritygold.com/freedom.
If the president, wants me to put me on a list, it's not an honor to serve here. It's an honor and a duty. But I tell you what, I've been waiting 26 years to be the senior director for counterterrorism. I don't know what I do next, really. I mean, on my LinkedIn, I kind of tick that box. Do I become a poet next or a farmer? I have such an incredible team. It makes my job super easy. And look, it's 74 high-value targets in 100 days. I am living the dream. People are, walking around the White House. How are you doing, Dr. G? I say to them, and I'm sure they're sick of it by now, 110 days in, living the dream. And Alex, I mean it.
Yeah, and this is I asked you this last time you were here, and I know I've asked this to Peter Navarro, I've asked this to several of the top people in the administration that I've interviewed, that if you were you meant to do this job you're doing right now? And there's not one person who's given any nuance. Everyone has said, oh no, I'm meant to do this right now. That's why I'm here on this planet.
And there's such an energy. I mean, yeah. You know me, what was it? Jesse Waters called me the scariest man on television. It is really weird, and people may think it's creepy. I walk around the West Wing, the Eisenhower building, with this giant rictus grin for 13 hours a day, because that's what it's like. You know, President Trump 2.0, we are getting stuff. Did I tell you this story? I'm going to tell this story publicly.
Please.
I'm not going to reveal the outlets, but you know Pebble Beach. So Pebble Beach is the name of the North Lawn, where there's this series, like 20 little canvas-covered camera stands, so that every cable company, when their correspondent says live from the White House, they've got this permanent
this is where all the media people camp out for their live shots.
Right. So outside the press briefing, there's this live shot row. And we were 2 weeks in, and I'm at one of the end booths with a friendly outlet, and I was preparing for a hit on Newsmax, and I'm ready to roll. We haven't started yet, and there's another correspondent in the next booth waiting to do her live from the White House, and it's one of the alphabet soup legacy cable news channels. And clearly this woman doesn't understand that canvas is not sound deadening. Yeah. And she's talking to her producer back in New York through her earpiece, and she goes, I don't know, I can't keep up with them. And I kind of smiled, and I thought, yeah, lady, that's the point. Yeah. You know, it's like Schwarzkopf in 91, shock and awe.
That's how it feels, and it's great. And it's also, I feel like that's comforted President Trump, just from my time hanging out with him, is that because he knows a lot of these judges are going to block some of the stuff he's trying to do, but he's doing so much that if he gets 60% or 70%, or if he gets 40% immediately and 30% after appeals, it's going to be a good record. It's like, it might be a historic record. It might be one of the best records ever. So, and I think look at the border. Look at Tom Homan. Look at the border. 97% decrease in illegals. Yeah. You can't argue with that. No, you can't. I think that's one of the maybe my number one stat for the first 100 days of the best accomplishments. Dr. G, we've spoken about our Catholic faith a lot over the years together. You're someone who I always have in the back of my mind when I haven't been to confession enough, because you're a big advocate for going. It's true. You asked me how often I went one time. This was many years ago. This had to be 7-8 years ago. You asked me how often I was going, and I said, I don't know, like once a month, maybe once every couple months. And you said, oh, you've got to go every week, my friend. You've got to go every week.
Well, I do. And I would say the bare minimum, Marlow, is once a month. Okay.
Okay. So that's the message. I know we got a lot of faith-based people in the audience. Do you have any thoughts on the conclave that's going on? It's incredibly secretive. It's very terrible for not just journalists, because if you get TV, you can just point the camera at the Vatican. That's always going to look cool. But for radio, it's tough for radio, because I don't really have a sense of what's going on in there. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, first, I want to say thank you to your team. Matt Boyle sat down with me, did a series of articles. I'm waiting for part 3, and he's been amazing. But I also want to give a shout out. It is so nice. I have Newsmax on in my office, and I have to see Dr. Thomas Williams, the Vatican correspondent from Breitbart, there every single day is super exciting. So great coverage. Look, I can't tell you what's going on inside the conclave. I have one wish as a humble Catholic and as a bad Christian. Of course, with my Hungarian family heritage, Cardinal Peter Erdő has a great reputation as a conservative. But if I had one choice, I don't know about you, Alex, but I think the revivification, the resurrection, the rebirth of the Catholic faith is likely to come out of Africa. So I'd love to see. We've had them once before, a long time ago. I'd love to see one of these super conservative men of God from Africa become the next pope. How about you?
Yeah, that's where it feels like those are the best options. But I'm admitting to the audience, and I feel it takes a big man to admit when he doesn't have full information when you're a news broadcaster and people rely on me for
I think when it comes to conclave, I think you're good. If you had inside information on conclave,
it's okay. But I don't know. I'm just not familiar with everyone, and to the level that I want to be. But I agree with you. It feels like the names from that the conservative African base seem to be very appealing. And we're doing all this. We're hiring people based on skin tone, Dr. G. Could we finally maybe get some benefit for this? Like we want to have a black pope? Fine. The most conservative guys are black. Let's do it. Fine. Sounds great.
All right. DEI hits the Vatican. All right. We approve. We approve.
Yes, exactly. Just because the DI will be gone by the next time we have a pope. So this will be it. So I think we're on the same page. All right, Dr. G, amazing stuff. I know you've been very generous with your time. As always, we love to see you, and let's do this more often. Congratulations on all the jihadis you're killing, and we'll catch up with you soon.
God bless, and don't forget to get Alex Marlow's latest book.
Oh, thank you. Well, but it's I haven't even talked to the audience about the big book projects that are coming up. One day soon, we're going to hear all about it. Soon. Do you know what we really need to do, though? We need to get to confession. What? That's what we need to do. That's the big thing. I got to get that.
I went to confession on Saturday, so get busy, my friend.
You got me beat in that regard. I gotta get there. All right. Thank you to producer Misty and to everyone in the audience. We'll talk to you tomorrow.